Title: No Reason, Just Racism Until He Changed the System. Part 1. Orders from Above. Officer Marcus J. Hale stood with both hands resting on his duty belt, the cold steel of his badge gleaming under the flickering lights of the precinct's underground parking lot. It was just after 11:30 p.m., and the weight of the day had settled into his shoulders like bricks soaked in regret. This wasn't how he'd imagined it. When Marcus joined the force 8 years ago, fresh out of the academy, he wore the uniform with pride. A black officer in a majority-white department, he knew he was walking a tightrope, but he believed in justice, in protecting people who looked like him and those who didn't. He believed in accountability, honor, truth. Tonight, those ideals felt dangerously far away. 2 hours earlier, the radio crackled inside Patrol Car Unit 17, the voice of Sergeant Ronald Bear cutting through the static. "Unit 17, do you copy?" Marcus picked up the mic. "Go for 17. Suspicious vehicle, corner of 14th and Walker, black Dodge Charger, tinted windows, just sitting there." "Any 911 calls about it?" Marcus asked. "No calls, just something I noticed on the street cam. Looks off. Go check it out." Marcus paused. "Copy that." He turned to his partner, Officer Claire Rivera, a Latina with 5 years on the job and sharp instincts. She raised an eyebrow. 14th and Walker? That's across from Lincoln Elementary. People park there all the time. We really gonna hit that without a complaint? Marcus didn't respond immediately. His jaw clenched slightly. "Let's roll." They approached the intersection slowly. Sure enough, a black Charger was parked just across from the darkened schoolyard, hazard lights off, engine running. Inside, a young black man sat in the driver's seat, typing something on his phone. Marcus parked their cruiser a few feet behind and stepped out. Claire followed, eyes scanning. "Doesn't look like he's doing anything," she said under her breath. Marcus nodded. He tapped the flashlight on his belt but didn't switch it on yet. He approached the driver's window. The man inside looked up, startled. "Evening," Marcus said calmly. "Mind telling me what you're doing here?" The man, visibly confused, responded, "Just waiting for my cousin. He lives 2 blocks over. I texted him I was here." Marcus nodded. "Can I see your ID, please?" The man sighed and handed it over. Marcus ran the name through dispatch. Clean, no warrants, registered owner, no crime, no complaint, no cause, and still something twisted in Marcus's gut. This stop was unnecessary, unjustified, unwanted. Back at the station, Marcus pulled Sergeant Bear aside. "Why'd you have me run that Charger?" he asked, his voice even. Bear sipped his coffee. "It looked sketchy. Tinted windows, just sitting there." "That's not a crime," Bear shrugged. "Could have been casing the school. Could have had drugs. Could have been anything. But it wasn't. It was nothing. You know that. And you sent me anyway." Bear's smile tightened. "Are you questioning an order, Officer Hale?" Marcus stepped closer. "I'm questioning the reason behind the order." Bear leaned in, voice low and mocking. "You think I sent you because he was black? Or because you're black and I didn't want to deal with the optics?" Marcus stared him down. "I think you're using your rank to cover bad decisions." Silence, then Bear chuckled. "Watch yourself, Hale. Don't start thinking the badge makes you bulletproof in here." Marcus walked away without another word, but something inside him cracked. This wasn't just about one stop. This was the system reminding him who it served. That night, Marcus drove home in silence. His wife, Tanisha, met him at the door with their toddler asleep on her shoulder. "You okay?" she asked. "No," Marcus whispered. "Not tonight." The next morning, Marcus filed a formal internal memo. He titled it plainly, "Unjustified Investigatory Stop. 14th and Walker." He outlined every detail, the lack of cause, the racial implications, the chain of command, the pressure. He sent it to the department's Office of Professional Standards and hit print. Then he made copies, one for his lawyer, one for the press, sealed and untouched just in case. 2 days passed, then 4. No reply, no meeting, just quiet. Then came the retaliation. Patrol shifts reassigned, no backup calls answered on time. Sudden performance reviews, citing attitude and failure to be a team player. Claire pulled him aside. They're icing you out, Marcus. I know. You gonna push this? Marcus nodded slowly. All the way. He filed a discrimination complaint with the city's Office of Civil Rights, and then he did what few officers dared to do. He sued. Hale v. City of Brookhaven Police Department. The lawsuit sent shockwaves through the department. The press got wind of it. Community activists held rallies outside the station. The mayor issued a generic statement about ongoing internal matters, but the people knew. They saw the pattern. And now they had a name, a face, and a voice refusing to back down. In court filings, the city denied everything. Said the stop was within protocol. Claimed Bear's order was based on available surveillance, and that Officer Hale had misinterpreted departmental procedures. But behind closed doors, internal emails painted a different picture. Leaked documents showed conversations between command staff discussing Marcus as a problem officer and too sensitive for the job. It was damning, and now it was public. Marcus sat beside his lawyer as the judge reviewed motions for discovery. His hand trembled slightly, not from fear, from fury, from truth, from purpose. This wasn't about revenge. It was about never again letting silence speak louder than justice. Part 2, The Blue Wall Cracks. The courtroom was small, almost intimate, but Marcus felt like he was sitting in front of the entire country. He wore a plain charcoal gray suit, no uniform, no badge, just him. The department's attorneys arrived in force. 3 white men in tailored suits, laptops open, papers stacked in neat surgical piles. His attorney, Camille Davis, was calm, sharp, unflinching. She wore glasses low on her nose and a steel resolve in her voice. "Remember," she whispered as the judge entered, "they're not scared of the truth. They're scared it'll get out." Outside the courthouse, a small crowd had gathered. Reporters with microphones, community leaders with signs. Accountability is public safety. We stand with Officer Hale. Silence is complicity. But inside the department, silence. The blue wall had gone up. No officers had volunteered to testify on Marcus's behalf. Not one. Even Claire Rivera, his former partner, had stopped replying to texts. The city's defense strategy was simple. Isolate Marcus. Paint him as disgruntled. Suggest he overreacted. They leaned hard on procedure. They showed grainy street cam footage of the Dodge Charger. They brought in Sergeant Bear, who testified with robotic calm. "I observed a vehicle that matched known profiles of recent theft cases. I radioed a patrol unit to investigate." Camille stood. "Sergeant Bear, were there any reports filed that day involving that vehicle?" "No." "Did the driver commit any moving violations?" "No." "Were there any weapons, contraband, or warrants found?" "No." "So what exactly was your probable cause?" Bear shifted. "My training and experience told me it was worth checking out." Camille nodded. "And you specifically requested Officer Hale, correct?" "Yes." "Why him?" "He was available." "That's not what your email said." She clicked her remote. The screen behind her lit up with a projected internal message. "Send Hale. If it turns into something, optics will play better." Bear's face turned a shade paler. Camille stepped closer. "What did you mean by optics, Sergeant?" Bear didn't answer. The judge leaned forward. "Answer the question, Sergeant." Bear looked down. "We try to match officer demographics to certain stops, so it doesn't look bad." Camille smiled without joy. "So it doesn't look bad, even if it is bad." After court adjourned for the day, Marcus sat on a bench outside the building, hands clasped tight. A voice broke the quiet. "Didn't think you had it in you." He turned. It was Claire. She looked tired and guilty. "You okay?" she asked. "No." She sat down beside him. "They called me in last week, told me to stay out of it. Said you were trying to burn down the house." Marcus didn't look at her. "I'm trying to fix the damn wiring before it catches fire." Claire sighed. "I should have spoken up." "You still can." She was quiet for a long time, then nodded. The next day in court, Camille surprised everyone by calling Officer Claire Rivera to the stand. She walked in slowly, uniform crisp, eyes steady. Under oath, she told the truth. "He didn't want to make that stop," she said. "He knew it wasn't right. We both did." Camille asked, Why didn't you report it? Claire hesitated. Because I knew what would happen if I did. What's happening to him? You get frozen out, watched, labeled a traitor. And what changed? Claire looked at Marcus. He didn't back down, so I couldn't keep hiding. The next few days were tense. Anonymous emails, threats. Someone keyed Marcus's car outside his apartment. But the tide was shifting. More officers began contacting Camille privately. Some offered signed statements. Others shared stories of similar retaliation after questioning racial bias. A hidden network of silence was starting to speak. One document became the centerpiece of the case. A confidential memo from a precinct captain to the chief. Officer Hale is intelligent but difficult. His awareness of racial optics is problematic for cohesion. We should consider limiting his advancement opportunities. The judge reviewed it carefully, then asked the city attorneys, "Do you still wish to argue that no racial bias existed here?" They had no answer. Outside, more people gathered each day. College students, retired officers, ministers, teachers. Some chanted, others just stood quietly holding candles. The mayor finally broke her silence, calling for a top-down review of department procedures. Someone, but Marcus didn't want headlines. He wanted change. As the trial neared closing arguments, Camille turned to the jury. "You are not just deciding whether Officer Hale was wronged," she said. "You are deciding whether the truth deserves a place in law enforcement, whether silence should protect the system or the people it serves." Marcus didn't sleep the night before the verdict. He walked the streets of his neighborhood at 3 a.m., hoodie pulled up, hands in pockets. The irony wasn't lost on him. 8 years on the force, and still out here in the dark, he didn't feel safe. Part 3. Verdicts and Reverberations. The jury returned after 3 hours. It felt like 30. Marcus sat motionless at the plaintiff's table, his lawyer Camille by his side. His hands stayed clasped, thumb rubbing along the inside of his palm in small, anxious circles. Across the aisle, the city's attorneys wore blank expressions, the kind you train into yourself to prepare for any outcome. The judge read the verdict aloud. "We, the jury, find in favor of the plaintiff, Officer Marcus J. Hale." Marcus closed his eyes, just for a second, then exhaled. The judge continued. "We award compensatory damages in the amount of $425,000 and direct the City of Brookhaven Police Department to undergo mandatory policy reform and federal oversight pending external review." Gasps echoed in the courtroom. Not because of the money, but because of the second part. This wasn't just a personal victory, it was a reckoning. The news hit hard. Within hours, headlines spread like brushfire. Black officer wins lawsuit against own department. Brookhaven PD faces federal review after discrimination verdict. Blue wall cracked. Marcus Hale makes history. Marcus received hundreds of messages, some supportive, some vicious. His inbox filled with, "Thank you for standing up. You're a disgrace to the badge. My son wants to be a cop now, because of you. Hope you never work in uniform again." He read them all, and replied to none. The department reacted swiftly. Chief Wilkins was reassigned. Sergeant Bear was placed on administrative leave. The city council called for the creation of an independent civilian oversight board. A new equity officer was appointed, and internal leadership courses were placed under external review. But Marcus knew better. Policies were easy to change. Culture was not. He sat across from Camille days later at a quiet cafe. "You could sue again if they retaliate," she said. "I know," he replied. "You still want to wear that uniform?" "I still want to serve," Marcus said. "I just don't know if I can do that in there anymore." Camille looked at him thoughtfully. "Then maybe you serve differently." Weeks passed. The settlement was finalized. The DOJ issued a statement confirming an independent monitor would oversee Brookhaven PD's compliance with reform agreements. But Marcus didn't celebrate. He watched. He waited. And then he acted. He returned to the Ground Unity Center, an old brick building converted into a community outreach space in one of Brookhaven's most overlooked neighborhoods. They used to host teen boxing there. Now it served as a hub for voter registration, mentorship programs, and neighborhood safety initiatives. Marcus walked through the doors and was greeted like family. "Officer Hale." "Nah," he smiled. "Just Marcus now." He offered to launch a program for young adults. Know your rights, know your power. It was half legal education, half real talk. He taught them how to handle traffic stops, how to ask the right questions, how to file complaints, how to film, document, and advocate. But more than that, he taught them how not to internalize fear. One night after class, a 17-year-old named Jordan lingered behind. "You really used to be a cop?" he asked, almost disbelieving. Marcus nodded. "You didn't ever, you know, turn your back on us?" Marcus hesitated. "I tried not to," he said, "but sometimes the system makes you choose. I chose late, but I chose right." Jordan nodded slowly. "I want to be like that." Marcus looked him in the eyes. "Be better than that." Meanwhile, internal tensions in the department simmered. The press spotlight faded, but behind the scenes, the shift was real. Younger officers started organizing peer support circles. Some filed their own complaints. A few sergeants resigned rather than undergo the new cultural sensitivity training. And then something unexpected happened. Claire Rivera was promoted, acting sergeant. She sent Marcus a text. "They offered it out of pressure. I'm taking it out of purpose. We're not done yet." One day Marcus returned to the precinct, not to rejoin, but to speak. He stood in front of a room full of officers, uniformed, skeptical, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. He cleared his throat. "I used to stand where you are," he began, "and I know some of you think I betrayed the badge, that I turned against the brotherhood." He paused. "But I didn't turn on anything. I turned toward the truth." He let the silence stretch. "I still believe in this job, but only if it's worthy of the people who trust us to do it. And trust starts with accountability." A few heads nodded, most didn't, but he didn't need all of them. He just needed one to listen. That night, walking back to his car, he passed a patrol unit pulling into the lot. The officer behind the wheel stopped, rolled down the window. It was Officer Simmons, a rookie from 2 years back. "Hey, Officer Hale," Simmons called out. Marcus turned. "It's just Marcus now." Simmons grinned. "You still taught me how to write a proper stop report." Marcus chuckled. "Glad someone remembered." The window rolled up. The cruiser pulled away. Marcus stood still, watching the taillights disappear. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel alone. Part 4. 2 Roads Forward. The invitation came in a white envelope with a federal seal. It wasn't from the department. It was from the National Justice Reform Task Force. Inside, a short letter. "We are forming a new National Advisory Council on Law Enforcement Accountability and Community Trust. Your experience is exactly what we need. We hope you will consider joining us as a senior civilian advisor." No rank, no badge, but real influence. Marcus placed the letter on his kitchen table beside another one, this time from Brookhaven PD. "The department invites you to return as an internal ethics and training consultant to assist with cultural reform and leadership development. Your perspective is critical. We believe your voice can change our future." 2 offers, 2 roads, one from outside the system, one from within. He met Camille at the same cafe where they once planned his lawsuit. She listened silently, hands around her coffee mug. "What are you leaning toward?" she asked. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "One lets me build something new. The other asked me to fix what almost broke me." Camille nodded. "You want the truth?" "Always." "You're not a symbol, Marcus. You're a blueprint. And blueprints don't mean anything if nobody builds with them." That night, he sat on the porch with Tanisha. The baby monitor hummed beside her. "You've always known how to fight," she said. "But I think this next part might be about how to teach." He looked at her. "You think I should go back?" "I think you should go where they can't ignore you. Not anymore." In the end, he didn't choose. He did both. He accepted the federal advisor role part-time, and he walked back into the Brookhaven PD building 2 weeks later as the newly appointed senior consultant for ethics and training. The atmosphere was tense. Some clapped, some looked away. Chief Harding, newly appointed, young, and already unpopular with old guard brass, greeted Marcus at the front desk. "Welcome back," he said. "You ready to make a lot of people uncomfortable?" Marcus grinned. "I've had practice. He started with ride-alongs, not in command meetings. On the street, he talked to rookies, to dispatchers, to sergeants working night shifts who hadn't been asked their opinion in years. He asked them what they needed, what scared them, what frustrated them, what they wished their leadership understood. And then he started training, not PowerPoints, conversations. He brought in former officers who'd left in frustration, community members who'd been harmed and healed, even teenagers from the Ground Unity Center. One class ended with a quiet officer, middle-aged, white, veteran of 20 years, approaching Marcus privately. "You know," the man said, "I thought all this reform talk was anti-cop bull, but listening to that kid speak about being stopped 3 times in a week for looking nervous, that got me." Marcus didn't say, "I told you so." He said, "Then we're getting somewhere." At the national level, his work grew. He spoke in congressional briefings, consulted on pilot programs that paired officers with mental health professionals, advised on nationwide de-escalation standards and federal funding requirements tied to bias training compliance. His inbox filled with invitations from precincts across the country and from families of officers who had once feared him. Back home, a mural appeared across from the community center. Marcus hadn't asked for it. He found out when Jordan, the teen who once asked, "You didn't turn your back on us, right?" texted him a photo. A painting of Marcus in uniform, half in police blues, half in civilian clothes. Hands open. Between them, a simple quote: "We don't fix the system by walking away from it. We fix it by walking back in, with the truth." He visited the mural that weekend, watched in silence as a father pointed to it, explaining to his young son who that man was. Marcus didn't say anything. He just stood in the sunlight and smiled. Part 5, the resistance zone. "You're wasting your time with these folks, Marcus." That was the first thing Chief Mallory said to him in Jacksonville, Florida. They were standing in a cramped precinct office, the air stale with coffee and old sweat. Posters of recruitment slogans hung beside outdated policy memos. The room reeked of a culture that hadn't changed since the late 80s, and liked it that way. Marcus kept his voice level. "I didn't come here to waste time. I came because your city accepted federal funding contingent on reform." Mallory grunted. "We didn't vote on that reform." "No," Marcus said, "but the citizens you serve did." The training session that day was brutal. Officers came in with crossed arms, furrowed brows, and defensive sarcasm. One raised his hand 5 minutes in. "So let me guess, sir. Every traffic stop is racist now, huh?" Marcus didn't flinch. "No, just the ones without cause. You'd be surprised how many fall in that category." Another officer muttered, "Should have stayed a lawyer." Marcus stepped forward. "I was a cop for 8 years. I stood in your shoes, and I nearly lost my career for refusing to follow an order I knew was wrong." Silence, he continued. "This training isn't to take away your power. It's to teach you how to use it responsibly, so people trust you again." A few heads turned. One officer nodded ever so slightly. Later that day, his rental car had a flat tire. No debris, no nail, clean puncture. The rental rep said, "Looks like someone used an awl. Common prank in hostile towns." Marcus didn't react. He changed the tire himself and drove to the hotel in silence. That night, he received a message from an unknown number. "Watch yourself, suit boy. You're not welcome here." He showed it to Camille, who now served as general counsel for the National Task Force. She exhaled sharply. "This kind of pushback means you're hitting a nerve." "I'm not afraid," Marcus replied. "Good," she said, "because they are." Back in Brookhaven, changes were taking root. Officer Rivera, now Sergeant Rivera, had instituted a new practice: community review circles. Every month, officers sat down with residents to talk openly. No script, no lawyers. The first few were rough, defensive cops, angry citizens. But after 4 sessions, something shifted. An elderly woman named Miss Lorna stood up and said, "This is the first time I've spoken to a cop without shaking." Everyone in the room went still. Sergeant Rivera looked at Marcus later that night. "She's why we do this, right?" He smiled. "Always." Marcus's Ground Unity Youth program was also evolving. A former student, Jordan, had started leading sessions. He created a podcast called Know the Line, where he interviewed current and former officers young activists, and even public defenders. Episode 1, The Stop That Started It All, Marcus Hale. It went viral overnight. The national media circled again. Marcus was invited to speak on CNN, then MSNBC, then NPR. A headline in Time read, "The cop who sued the system and came back to fix it." But fame was never the goal. Change was. And that change brought more enemies. In late October, Marcus returned to Jacksonville for a follow-up visit. Mallory had resigned. His replacement, acting chief Tamara Boyd, was the first black woman to ever lead the department. She greeted Marcus with a firm handshake and a grin. "Told them I wouldn't take the job unless they let me clean house. First thing I did? Bring you back." The new training sessions were packed. This time, officers asked real questions. How do I stop a car without escalating? What if my partner's crossing a line? How do I report that safely? How do I unlearn bias I didn't even know I had? Marcus answered each one with patience, clarity, and honesty. And when a young officer, barely 24, asked, "Did you ever think of quitting?" Marcus answered without hesitation, "Every day, but I stayed, because silence is too expensive." That night after the last session, Chief Boyd handed Marcus a file. "This one's different," she said. It was a complaint from a rookie officer against a sergeant accused of excessive force during a routine traffic stop. The rookie had reported it up the chain. And this time, the chain responded. The sergeant was suspended pending investigation. Marcus looked at the report, then at Chief Boyd. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. She raised an eyebrow. "A signal," he said. "The system is starting to listen." As he flew back to Brookhaven the next morning, Marcus gazed out the window of the plane. Below, cities stretched like arteries, neighborhoods like pulse points. So much pain, so much work left. But for the first time in his life, he didn't feel like he was fighting against something. He was building toward something. Part 6. Where Trust is Dead. The email subject line was simple. Urgent, immediate advisory requested. Los Piedras PD incident. Marcus clicked. Inside, a brief message from the Department of Justice. Following the fatal shooting of an unarmed civilian in Los Piedras, California, we are requesting immediate deployment of a national advisory representative. Given your record, the task force has identified you as best suited to lead a field assessment and recommend a structural intervention plan. Your response is requested within 24 hours. Marcus stared at the screen. He'd seen the footage. A black teenager. Running. No weapon. 4 shots. Back turned. His name was Terrell Gaines, 17. Tanisha sat beside him at the kitchen table that night. "You don't have to go," she said quietly. "You've done enough." Marcus shook his head. "Not if this keeps happening." She took his hand. "Just promise me something." "What?" "That if they try to break you again, you walk away before they succeed." He didn't answer right away, then whispered, "Deal." He landed in Los Piedras 2 days later. The city was tense. Protests filled the streets. Local businesses were boarded up. Murals of Terrell's face bloomed on brick walls, candles flickering beneath them. Outside the police station, armed riot officers stood in a line, faces blank behind plastic visors. Inside it was worse. Silence, resentment, fear. Chief Dennis York, a grizzled man in his early 60s, greeted Marcus in a bare-bones conference room. "Don't take this the wrong way," York said, "but you being here makes my job 10 times harder." Marcus met his eyes. "You being here might have made Tyrell Gaines dead." York said nothing. The department was under federal review. Body cam footage had been released. The officer who pulled the trigger, Daniel Pratt, claimed he feared for his life. But there was no struggle, no weapon, no visible threat. Just a kid running, and now a city imploding. Marcus began his work. He met with officers, leadership, civilian analysts, and most importantly, the Gaines family. Terrell's mother, Jasmine, stared at Marcus during their first meeting, eyes hollow from grief. "You wore the same uniform," she said. "Yes," Marcus replied softly, "and that's why I'm here." She looked at him, long and hard. If you're here to heal trust, you're wasting your time. There's nothing left to fix. That boy's not coming home. I'm not here to fix grief, Marcus said. I'm here to make sure no one else buries a child like you did. She didn't answer, but she didn't throw him out either. Day 3, Marcus led a listening session between junior officers and community youth leaders. It ended in shouting. A young activist named Dre slammed his fist on the table. You're all just scared of black bodies, man. You see a hoodie and you pull your damn gun. An officer shouted back, you don't know what it's like to walk into danger every day. Marcus held up his hands. This is what mistrust sounds like. Messy, angry, real. He looked at the room. But what you do next, that decides if it stays like this. Behind closed doors, Chief York fought him at every turn. He refused to suspend the officer involved, refused to release internal reports, refused to acknowledge systemic problems. Marcus confronted him after one meeting. You're protecting a man who killed a child. York replied coldly, I'm protecting a department that's already on fire. I don't need you pouring gasoline. You need me because you already burned the bridge, Marcus said. I'm the only one offering you wood and nails. On day 5, Marcus attended a candlelight vigil. Hundreds gathered in silence as Terrell's classmates read poems, prayers, and memories. A little boy, Terrell's cousin, held a photo above his head, arms trembling. The crowd murmured Terrell's name in unison. Say his name. Tyrell Gaines. Marcus stood near the back, tears in his eyes. Not as a cop, not as an advisor, as a black man who had once been a black boy. The next morning, everything changed. A confidential source leaked an internal email from Chief York to senior staff. Keep the narrative focused on officer safety. Gaines ran. That's the story. We don't need any more bleeding heart optics from DC consultants. The press ran it by noon. York was forced to resign by 5 p.m. That night, Marcus was asked to address the city council in an emergency session. He stood alone at the microphone. His voice was clear, controlled, furious only in rhythm. You don't need my words. You need mirrors. This city isn't bleeding because of one officer. It's bleeding because, for too long, you taught the badge to fear skin more than crime. He looked around the chamber. And until that changes, every reform is just a Band-Aid over a bullet wound. Wait for an erm. The council voted unanimously to implement his full proposal. A complete audit of all use of force cases from the last 5 years. Independent civilian review board with subpoena power. Immediate firing of Officer Pratt. Community investment in trauma-informed policing and youth justice alternatives. Marcus stood alone outside City Hall at midnight. Jasmine Gaines walked up beside him. She didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, you did what I didn't think was possible. He turned to her. So did you. Part 7, The Politics of Reform. It began with a phone call from Washington. The voice on the other end was calm, precise. Mr. Hale, this is Deputy Director Amelia Weiss from the Office of Federal Justice Strategy. We'd like to speak with you about leading the design of a national training and reform initiative. Marcus paused. A national program? Correct. A single, unified standard. Ethics, bias training, use of force limits, oversight integration, the full scope. We're assembling a task force, and we want your name on the proposal. Days later, Marcus was flown to D.C. He sat in a wood-paneled room, surrounded by senators, advisors, and career bureaucrats. They called the project Shield 21. Wesort, a federal model of modern policing, born out of public pressure, a growing reform movement, and the undeniable results of Marcus's work in Brookhaven, Jacksonville, and Los Piedras. There was just one problem. Not everyone wanted it to succeed. The backlash came fast. Right-wing news outlets ran stories with headlines like, Ex-cop turned activist wants to control police nationwide, federal overreach masquerading as reform. Marcus Hale, hero or Trojan horse? Some senators, and particularly those backed by police unions, began to voice serious concerns. In committee meetings, they questioned Marcus's qualifications, his neutrality, his agenda. During one closed-door session, Senator Carl Durbin of Wyoming leaned back in his chair and asked, Mr. Hale, isn't it true that you once filed a lawsuit against your own department? Marcus responded without hesitation. It's true, and it saved lives. Durbin raised an eyebrow. Or damage morale and public trust? Marcus leaned forward. Trust was already broken, Senator. I just refused to keep sweeping the pieces under the rug. The room went quiet. Weiss smiled faintly in the corner. Outside the Capitol, the pressure mounted. Police unions launched a campaign against Shield 21. Dozens of departments signed an open letter refusing to adopt any federal guidelines that undermine local authority. Marcus became the focus of both admiration and rage. His face on magazine covers, his words twisted in social media echo chambers. At night, the pressure got to him. He'd wake up at 3 a.m., eyes wide, heart racing. He kept a notepad on his nightstand, scribbling ideas, strategies, worries. Tanisha would roll over and whisper, "You okay?" "I don't know," he'd admit. "It feels like we're winning and losing at the same time." Then came the bombshell, an anonymous leak, a clipped excerpt from a speech Marcus gave at a youth event 3 years prior. In it, he said, "The badge is only as good as the hand that wears it, and sometimes that hand needs to be held accountable." The clip was spun into outrage. Talk shows rage. "He doesn't respect law enforcement. He wants to dismantle policing. Marcus Hale is a threat to our institutions." The truth, that the speech was about restoring integrity, was ignored. Camille called him in the middle of the chaos. "You're not a public servant anymore," she warned. "You're a symbol now. That means they'll try to break you instead of your ideas." Marcus exhaled. "So, what do I do?" "Remind them why you started." At the next hearing, Marcus walked in with only a folder. No talking points, no notes, just conviction. He stood before the panel. "I'm not here to make anyone comfortable. I'm here because a 17-year-old boy named Terrell Gaines bled out on pavement while 4 officers stood over him. I'm here because mothers have buried sons who never made it home from a traffic stop. I'm here because the people you swore to serve no longer believe you're protecting them. And if that makes me a threat to the system, then maybe the system's overdue for a reckoning." The silence after was thick, then applause. From the public gallery, from reporters, and, shockingly, from 2 senators seated behind the committee table. 1 week later, Shield 21 was officially greenlit for a national pilot. 6 states, 80 departments. Marcus would lead the first wave. But it wasn't just policy now, it was movement. Cities began requesting his presence. Universities began quoting his case in law curriculum. Activists called him proof that you can be inside the system and still fight for those outside of it. And still, threats came. Emails, messages. One morning, he found a flyer taped to the door of the community center. "Traitor to the badge. Stay out." He took it down and kept walking in. Part 8. Where Reform Meets Resistance. The Eastbridge Police Department building was as worn down as its reputation. Gray concrete, cracked windows, and a silence that wasn't peaceful, just exhausted. When Marcus stepped through the doors, the front desk sergeant didn't look up. "Consultant Hale," he said flatly. "Your office is down the hall, 3rd door on the right. It's got a chair." The office was a supply closet with a desk crammed in. Marcus dropped his briefcase and smiled. "Nice to meet you too," he murmured. Later that morning, he met the command staff. Acting Chief Rick Donovan was blunt. "You've got 3 months, that's it. We're only doing this because the governor tied funding to it." He tapped his pen on the table. "You make trouble, you're gone." Marcus leaned forward, calm and clear. "I'm not here to make trouble. I'm here to stop the kind of trouble you've ignored for 20 years. Silence. Then a forced smile. "Great. Let's start with the patrol briefings tomorrow." The first briefing room was packed. Officers leaned back in chairs, arms crossed, faces closed. Marcus stood at the front in a plain shirt, no badge, no tie. Just truth. "I'm not here to lecture you. I've worn the uniform. I've felt the weight. But I also know what happens when we don't police ourselves. One mistake, one moment of unchecked fear or power, and a family loses a son. A department loses trust. The badge should protect you. But it shouldn't excuse you." A hand shot up. A sergeant with a square jaw and flat eyes. "Yeah? And what about when someone runs? You wait for an apology?" Marcus didn't blink. "No. You wait for a reason to pull your trigger that doesn't end with an obituary. Afterward, a rookie officer named Wes caught up with Marcus in the hallway. "Sir," he said, nervous, "I just want to say, I'm glad you're here." "You don't have to whisper that," Marcus said. Wes glanced around. "Around here, I do." Week 2. Marcus reviewed over 50 body cam clips. He watched officers escalate over silence, over confusion, over skin color. He flagged a dozen patterns of unconstitutional stops. He created a report. The department ignored it. So he went above them, directly to the DOJ liaison. The next day, 3 officers were pulled from field duty pending review. The blue wall cracked, and the noise began. His tires were slashed in the lot. A fake memo circulated online claiming he had advocated for disarming patrol officers. Threats followed. "You're not fixing this place. You're gutting it." Marcus kept walking in. He reached out to the community next, held a listening session at the local rec center. Only 8 people came. Most sat in the back, arms folded. An older woman spoke first. "You're just another federal puppet. You talk real pretty, but nothing changes." Marcus nodded. "You're right to be skeptical. So don't listen to my words. Watch what happens next." Another man raised his voice. "Tyrese Daniels was shot right over there," he said, pointing out the window. "That was my nephew. Your words won't bring him back." Marcus looked down. "No, they won't. But maybe they can stop the next mother from bearing hers." Week 4. Marcus launched an experimental initiative, a mixed patrol ride-along. 1 officer, 1 unarmed civilian observer, vetted, trained, and neutral. The department resisted. The union protested. But it happened. And the feedback? Surprising. "I never knew how fast things could go wrong," said one observer. "I never realized how defensive we sound all the time," said one officer. By the end of the 2nd month, Eastbridge had changed, not completely, but enough. The use of force incidents dropped by 37%. Complaint reports tripled, but so did officer self-reporting. One anonymous feedback form read, "We hated him when he came in. We feared him after 2 weeks. Now we're wondering why we didn't have him 10 years ago." Before leaving, Marcus met Acting Chief Donovan one last time. Donovan cleared his throat. "You made enemies here, Hale. I didn't come to make friends." "But you made something else," Donovan admitted. "Accountability. And maybe decency." He extended his hand. Marcus shook it. On the drive out of Eastbridge, Marcus passed a bus stop. A teenage boy stood beneath the station wall. On it, someone had spray painted, "He didn't wear a badge, but he made the badge matter again." Marcus rolled down the window and kept going. Part 9. The final briefing. The email was short, just 1 sentence. "You've been nominated for Director of National Police Accountability and Reform." Marcus stared at the screen for a long moment, then leaned back. No smile. Just the weight of what that meant. The position didn't exist until now. Congress had approved it as part of SHIELD 21 Phase 2, a cabinet-adjacent role, direct access to the Attorney General, oversight of funding, training, and federal investigations nationwide. Whoever held it would be the face of police reform in America. And they wanted Marcus. The phone calls began immediately. "Camille, they'll praise you publicly and try to control you privately." Claire Rivera, "I'll follow your lead. But if you go in, don't go in soft." Tanisha, "This could change everything. Just promise me it won't change you." In D.C., he met with the selection committee. 7 people, some reformers, some career politicians, some watchers. Senator Durbin was back, still skeptical. "We need someone bold, Mr. Hale," he said, "but also someone cooperative." Marcus folded his hands. "You don't want cooperation. You want a mouthpiece." Silence. Then Weiss, now Assistant Attorney General, said simply, "We want someone who's walked the fire and didn't come out smelling like smoke." The media caught wind within a day. Marcus Hale poised to lead national police reform. Hero or hazard? Will the man who sued the system now run it? Some praised, some panicked. One police union called it an unforgivable betrayal. A civil rights coalition said it was long overdue justice. Marcus ignored the noise. He flew back to Brookhaven for one night, stood in front of the old Ground Unity Center, The mural was still there, half uniform, half civilian, hands open. Quote beneath, "We don't fix the system by walking away from it. We fix it by walking back in with the truth." Jordan was waiting inside, now 21, studying law. "People think this is the end of your fight," he said, "but I think it's just the start." Marcus smiled. "Me too." Confirmation hearings were brutal. They dug into every speech, every stop, every case. A senator asked, "Mr. Hale, do you believe most police are racist?" Marcus answered, "I believe most police are trained in systems that fail to recognize bias and punish those who speak against it." Another asked, "Do you think policing should be abolished?" Marcus looked him dead in the eye. "No, I believe it should be worthy of the people it claims to protect." In the end, the vote passed, 53 to 47, narrow, historic. Marcus Hale, the first ever director of National Police Accountability and Reform. His first speech was broadcast nationally. He stood on the steps of the Department of Justice. No teleprompter, just heart. "When I was a child, my father told me the badge was supposed to mean protection. When I was a cop, I learned that sometimes it meant silence. And when I sued my own department, I learned the hardest truth, that justice doesn't live in a building. It lives in what we refuse to ignore. My job now is to make sure no one is ever told again to stand down when they see wrong. The badge can mean protection again, but only if we all demand it." In the months that followed, change accelerated. Departments were held to real standards. Funding was tied to transparency. Federal investigations into misconduct doubled. More officers left the force. But more reform-minded ones stepped up. And the public? They started to believe again. Late one night, Marcus sat alone in his new office. Dark wood desk. Silence. He opened a drawer and pulled out an old photo. Him and Claire. First patrol shift. Back when all this was just a dream. He smiled. Not because it was easy, but because it was earned. Part 10, The Last Stand. It began with a knock. 2:14 a.m. Marcus opened the door of his hotel room in Baltimore, still half asleep. An aide stood there, pale, shaking. "You need to see this." On the screen was a leaked video, a body cam, a federal marshal in Texas, dragging a man from a vehicle. No warning, no charge. The man begged, screamed until he stopped moving. Another name, another face, another death. And this time, under federal authority, under Marcus's jurisdiction. By dawn, the headlines were on fire. Federal marshal kills unarmed man during traffic stop. Where was Marcus Hale, National Reform Director, silent amid scandal? The man's name was Luis Calderon, 32, father of two. No record, no weapon, no reason. Marcus canceled his schedule, flew straight to Austin, walked into the marshal's regional office unannounced. The entire place froze. He met the commanding officer, eyes unblinking. "Give me the footage, the full version, the unedited logs, now." They tried to stall, tried to pass blame, tried to wait it out. Marcus didn't blink. "Either you release it, or I shut this place down." That night, standing before a sea of microphones, Marcus spoke. This office operated under federal protection, under federal trust. That trust was broken the moment Luis Calderon was thrown to the pavement and left to die. There will be full accountability. No badge is above justice. The crowd was silent. Then slowly, applause. Not from everyone, but enough. Within 72 hours, the marshal involved was suspended. Within 2 weeks, indicted. The Calderon family met Marcus privately. Luis's wife, Elena, could barely speak, but she took Marcus's hand. "Make it mean something," she whispered. He nodded, holding back tears. "I promise." Back in D.C., the backlash came hard. Critics claimed Marcus had overreached, that he'd politicized a tragedy. A wave of lawmakers called for a hearing into Shield 21. Some wanted to defund it, end it, erase it. Camille visited his office. "You're not just fighting for policy now," she said. "You're fighting for memory." "I know," Marcus replied. "Then fight loud." The hearing was brutal. A senator slammed his fist on the table. "Are we supposed to believe that you, a man who sued his own department, can now manage a national network of law enforcement. Marcus leaned in. Yes, because I know what broken looks like, and I know how to fix it. Another senator sneered. What makes you think this country wants to be fixed? Marcus stood up. Because parents still cry over body bags. Because communities still scream for answers. Because people still march, still vote, still hope, even when they shouldn't have to. We do want to be better. I'm just not asking anymore. I'm building it. The vote came down to the wire, but Shield 21 survived. Barely. And Marcus? He stayed in his seat, not untouched, but unbroken. In the months that followed, the Calderon case became a turning point. 6 new policies were signed into federal law. Mandatory release of all federal body cam footage within 21 days. Independent prosecutors for all federal officer-involved deaths. Funding priority for de-escalation tech and training. Protection clauses for internal whistleblowers. Civilian oversight at the regional federal level. Luis's Law, a national database of all use of force fatalities by agency. Luis's name would not be forgotten, and neither would the man who refused to stay quiet. 1 year later, Marcus stood on stage at a national conference on justice reform. The crowd of thousands, officers, lawyers, teachers, survivors, rose to their feet as he walked up. He looked out over the sea of faces. Many had doubted him. Some still did, but most were there because he made them believe again. He began, I wasn't born to wear a badge. I was born to know what it feels like to be watched by one. I didn't ask for this fight, but I refuse to look away from it. What we build now must be bigger than reform. It must be dignity. It must be humanity. It must be justice that does not wait until someone dies to show up. After the applause, a young boy approached him backstage, wearing a suit 2 sizes too big. Mr. Hale? The boy asked. Yes, sir. I want to be like you someday. Marcus knelt down. Don't be like me, he said. Be better.